Welcome to the April webinar. Perhaps you can figure out why I'm echoing. In any case, we're delighted to have you here with us this morning. We are looking at business approaches to onboarding, as well as training and developing new employees. And we have with us a great number of experts in this field. Excuse me. You will notice that Dane Linn is not among them. Dane, as some of you know, works for the Business Roundtable, and yesterday evening he was asked to coordinate the Business Roundtable's response to the crisis in India. So he is not going to be able to join us this morning. I'm Susan Sclafani. I am working with the Forum for World Education on programming, and I will be your moderator this morning. We have with us a wonderful group of experts who have been in the development of employee business for a number of years, and we will look forward to hearing from them how they anticipate that their companies will continue to identify, bring on board, prepare, and train the employees that they have. We are going to start this morning with Anja Hartmann of Bucketrider, a consulting group that is working with a number of different companies. Anja was at McKinsey for a number of years and has brought that plus other experiences together in her current work. Anja, how about starting us off with talking about what it is that employers are looking for as they bring on new employees?
Thank you for the kind introduction, Susan, and thank you also for the invitation. When preparing for this, I thought about what I've seen with my business clients. So basically top management in large, mostly global companies, admittedly with a certain bias in Europe, because that's where I'm based. And I brought together a couple of more general, maybe at first glance, abstract themes that I've seen emerge what companies are actually looking for. So in the next couple of minutes, I want to talk you through these themes and what I think the implications are for how you can actually prepare employees to respond to these company needs. Let me see if I can share my slides here. There we go, and I can show it to you. There you go. So the interesting point about what I see companies looking for is that they are almost trying to, square the circle, or as we say in Germany, they look for an egg-giving, milk-giving, wool-giving pig, which in German it's a nice word because it's the eierlegende Wollmilchsau. It's basically an animal that is able to deliver everything in one go. And if you group that a little bit, I'm going to give some examples, right? So, for example, if you think at what the automotive industry is going through right now, they have the big challenge that the industry is changing, moving somehow away from the old combustion engine world into a world where they expect to be a lot more electromobility and a lot more software-driven activities around the car. So what they want on the one hand is expertise, and they need expertise in new fields. Like all the big automotive players are looking for software engineers like crazy. So basically they are buying them by the hundreds, I would say. And at the same time, they are also looking for people who have the big picture. So they want people who are able to move like skillfully between the fields, and then like where belongs in the bigger context. And of course, already as a starting point, very who can do both. And then the challenge is to stay with the same example. They are looking for experience, of course. They want people who have ideally built cars for 20, 30 years. If you follow the news, even a company like Tesla is hiring automotive engineers from Daimler or from BMW to make sure they have some people who have actually built cars in their life and not just put together software and batteries. So they want experience, but they also want an enormous amount of innovative power. They want people who bring new ideas, who actually can come up with new technical solutions. And again, there's a contradiction, because somebody who spent 20 years building cars, or as it is usually building brakes or building seats or building pistons, it becomes very specific, is often not the person who is most creative about innovative ideas. So again, there is this second almost contradiction or balancing act where they are looking for both. And that continues when you look more at the processes, how companies work and how companies work with their customers. There is a third dimension where companies are looking both for reliability and for creativity. I think a good industry to look at for this is what happens in banking or in insurance, as companies move to more online business. A lot around these online businesses is very creative and very, very new and very light touch. Whereas the classical banking business banks on reliability. I mean, this is what they stand for and what they used to stand for. And you can even see, I think, that some of the cases around difficulties with financial companies. I mean, we had the famous Wirecard example just recently. It stemmed from this contradiction, that it's very hard to bring the reliability and the creativity together. And then the challenge continues further when you look more in the direction of culture or leadership. So companies, of course, want direction. They want to, both in the leadership and for their people, tell people very clearly where they are going. But they also want a certain openness and like benefit from a certain randomness of the situation. I've seen that, for example, in a lot of companies in the energy industry in the last decade or so, where on the one hand, everybody was trying to find strong perspectives in terms of strategy. So are we going out of fossil fuels? Are we going into wind? Are we going into solar? So you need this kind of broad general direction. But then when it breaks down to the operating level, somebody who is operating a power plant, they need to know whether they are actually going to operate that power plant or not. They cannot live with an ambiguous strategy that says like, okay, we're going to kind of do it, but maybe not. So they're looking for this direction. And at the same time, trying to be a lot more open in terms of how they run the actual work, introducing new work methods, agile methods, etc. And then finally, you see this tension between companies rooting for diversity, which has become a value in itself, and people are actually hiring for diversity along a number of dimensions, which puts them in the position where they need to think very explicitly about, okay, if we have a very diverse workforce, what does our shared culture look like? Because a shared culture or shared identity is kind of contradictory to diversity. And I think if you follow some of the CEOs, for example, on LinkedIn, you see how many are struggling with this, because they try to represent the shared culture through like wearing the company colors or showing off certain company gadgets. Which are very, very simple ways of creating an identity, and at the same time they praise the diversity and the need for having different views. So, by and large, there is a huge need for almost contradictory skills and competencies in the workforce that I see basically all of my clients look for. And if you try to translate that into like what would a single employee look like, that's why I put the little Ganesha in the middle. It's almost like this multi-armed, multi-tooled person who is able to be not only ambidextrous, but well, in this case, I think it's 6 arms, but it could be 8 or 10 or whatever. And if you then roll back, and I think this is where our discussion originally started, Susan, to what does that mean for earlier education? Of course, it's impossible to like fill these 10 dimensions into one single individual. So you have to think about what do people have to learn in order to be able to respond at least to some of these. And I think if you try to sum it up very simply, you come up with three things. Of course, there is the need for employees to bring not so much skills or competencies, but the ability to learn. So it's a meta skill, right? It's not knowing how to build a piston, but it's knowing how to learn how to build a piston. And if you look at the classical Heifetz distinction between technical learning and adaptive learning, I think this is an ability to learn technical stuff. And companies, I'm very curious to see what the others are going to say about this later, but companies, I think, are investing a lot into more innovative forms of technical learning these days, which has become a lot easier through all the online opportunities that we now have. But on the other hand, and that's the second point, you need the more adaptive portion of Heifetz leadership model. So you need to help people to have a will to grow and actually develop themselves, which also means shed old paradigms, get rid of habits that are no longer useful, reinvent yourself. And this, in my experience, is much harder for companies because ideally you hire someone to do a job. Now, if you help them grow, you basically help them develop out of that job, which means in the consequence, you have two problems, right? You don't have the person for the job anymore because he or she developed out of it. And you have a person with a different skill set for which you now need to find a job. So that is very much at odds with the classical view of companies which have posts and then you fill a post and then you're done. And means almost a paradigm shift for the whole field of people development. Actually, I think Heather and William are going to talk about McKinsey a little bit more later, but one of the greatest examples of how this can work for me was the engagement manager, the project leader training at McKinsey, which gives people the opportunity to spend, I think, a week, it was in my time, offsite, to think about what you want to do with your life. So basically, the firm helped us all to come to terms with our career perspective, independent of whether it would be within the firm or outside the firm. And I think that was a wonderful tool to actually address this will to grow without putting a lot of pressure on people. But I'll leave it to Heather and William to maybe pick up on this later, how the firm does that today, because my experience is some 10 years back. And finally, the third point, of course, if you think about all these contradictions or balancing acts that I showed on the previous slide, employees need to bring the judgment to make good choices, because you need to know when to be creative or when to be reliable. You need to know when to be innovative or when to bring in your experience. And that's, again, a meta ability, a level of complexity that is not easy to teach, especially to younger people. So if you think of psychological development, it usually is something that comes later in life. So an interesting question would be, what can you do early on to prepare people to pick this up easily later? So in the end, I think, and this is what I put in the lower corner of the chart, I think the really big challenge for companies and leaders is, how can you work with human beings who change all the time? I mean, they do by nature, but the new environment requires more change and more transformation. And if our institutions, our teachers are actually able to teach people how to deal with change, I think that would be a true game changer also for most companies, because this is what they will need later when the employees join the companies. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting. If you can, there we go. I think that you've raised some of the critical issues that we face, not only in hiring at the company level, but looking at education and wondering how do we prepare people for these somewhat, I guess I would say, challenging combinations of skills and abilities that they're going to need to use in order to be successful. I think that in the K-12 system and in many of our universities, we are still preparing people for the old society rather than the new, more innovative world. And I think that's a challenge for all of us. Neo, how is Alibaba approaching these issues? Oh, we may have just lost him. Did we? Okay, well.
He's still on the participant list, right? So
yeah, but he's Neo, your picture is no longer there and you are on mute. So I don't know whether, we'll see in a minute whether he's just changing to his slides. And if not, then perhaps we should move to, oh no, he's not there at all. Okay, well, being the innovative, flexible people that I know you are, Heather and William, why don't you pick up here and talk about what McKinsey does do in order to bring people on board and prepare them during their careers with McKinsey, and whether they're still offering people the opportunity to step away and consider what it is that they would prefer to do with their lives in terms of, oh wait, Neo's back?
Yeah, sorry, somehow my internet has stopped working. I hope that's no problem.
Okay. All right, well, would you like to share with us what Alibaba is doing?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, it's my honor to have this opportunity to share my understanding about my past experience in Alibaba. I joined Alibaba since December 2014, and in the beginning I was head of the management and the leadership team. And a few years ago, Jack Ma launched a new program and to nurture the entrepreneur global wide. So I joined another team. Recently, I mostly focus on entrepreneur training program. And let me share my screen and first, just 1 second.
Okay.
Susan, are you able to see my screen?
Yes. There we go.
Okay, great.
Great.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think in the beginning, I would like to say one of the very key concepts of Alibaba, which is many of you probably know Jack was an English teacher in his early time, and later on, after he graduated from the university, he also became a teacher and teaching English in the university. And then he continued to say that internally, the most important asset of an organization is people. So that's why, even in the beginning, I remember Jack said, and he actually, for the first company new employee orientation, and Jack actually speaks to everybody. And Jack also told us, for the first 3,000 or 4,000 employees who joined the company, and he also joined the new employee orientation program and speak to them and face by face. So I want to say the employee and the people are most important asset. At least this is one of the very important principle in our company. And when I work for, we call it Hupan School, and which is an internal employee development department. And this is a structure. This is a structure about the Hupan schools. So you can see, and we do have 6 different functions. And the first one, which is new employee orientation, by the employee who join the company who need to go through this training program. There are 2 programs, and the first one called 100年 Ali, which is for the frontline employee, and for the second one called 100年 Hu Pan, which is a new employee orientation program for the senior leaders. For the second columns, which we call the professional development, right now Alibaba already is a company and with over 120,000 employees, which is a very large group. And there are several major roles in our company. And for the different role, we do have committees. A committee, which means there are a certain group of people forming together in charge of the professional development in their own areas. Internally, right now, we do have 5 committee plus the 1 soft skill training. So we do have an operation committee, which is mostly focused on the e-commerce operations trainings. We have a product committee, which is a group of the product manager who are designing the e-commerce product. And we have a UED committee, which is focused on user experience design, interface design. And we have a data committee that have AI and the data. They're teaching these kinds of professional areas. We have a marketing committee who are focused on the marketing trainings. And the last one, but not least, we have a soft skill training, something like a basic thing, like time management and negotiation skill. You all go these kinds of things. You all go to the Luohan. It is a soft skills. And for the third column, which is our management and leadership development program, we have 3 programs. And the first one, which is frontline business leader, and the second one, which is middle level business leader, and the third one, which is senior level business leader. This is very common, and like many of the company, and design their training program. The fourth column, which is a talent program, I think this program is very unique internally in Alibaba. And the first program, it is a group of programs. We call them president class. I just direct translate from Chinese into English. It represents certain levels. And in this level, we have a first one, which is Jack Ma class. We use a Jack Ma's name to name a class, and it is a talent program, and which means that each year we will review and select those people who join the Jack Ma class. And Jack will, as a lead facilitator, lead lectures, and to teach, for this entire class and for entire years. And the second, which is Daniel's class. And you probably don't know Daniel is our CEO of the Alibaba Group, and who also running his own class. And the third, as you know, Alibaba, you probably, the Alibaba is a business is quite big. Yes, we have our e-commerce marketing. So we have our e-commerce marketplace, and we have our payment and digital payments business. We have our cloud business. We have our logistic business. So these 4 are the important pillars of digital ecosystem. But for each pillar, we do have there's a BUs or BG's head, and we choose their name and to name their class. So all this program is running in group levels. And the second program, we call it president class. And the second group we call Young Talent Training Camp, which is for each BU we will each year, sometimes around April, we will do a talent review board. Through talent review board, we will select a certain level, certain talents by identified through their performance and the potential. And normally high performance, high potential people will be selected and join this kind of young talents training camp. And then the last but not least, also for each BU that have a most important role, we need to run the successors programs. So this is also extremely important for the future development of the organization. And the last but not least, also globalization. And in 2016, Alibaba founded the Alibaba Global Leadership Academy under Hupan School. And I am the founders of the Alibaba Global Leadership Academy. And back to that moment, this program mostly focuses on two groups of people. One which is overseas employee. Alibaba is a Chinese company. So for those overseas employees who join the company, who do have a challenge to understand Alibaba as a Chinese company, also as well as the Chinese culture, because as a foreigner people, whenever where you come from, if not from East Asian, the culture will be very different. So this program will help those people, overseas employees, and have a better understanding about China as well as Alibaba as a company. And the second program we call it Onboarding program. Onboarding right here. So which is we're sending our Chinese employee to overseas. And this is also a very big challenge for us, because many Chinese who has a lack of understanding about the Western cultures. But even when we talk about Western, different countries might also have different cultures. We need to equip them with a proper understanding and about the target country's culture, also about the basic skill about how to communicate with foreigner people. And that is what that program's purpose. And then altogether, even the program also become even more important, which is we do have an online learning platform, and which share all the internal materials and videos, and the people are able to register programs through this online learning platform to start their self-learnings. Okay, through these pictures, you are able to get a sense about how Alibaba see the employees' development in group levels. Yes. So the induction of the employee, which is just one part of the entire employees' development circles in the entire company, Okay, then moving forwards. So what Alibaba looking for? And Alibaba, Jack actually said that many times, we are looking for the people who share the same mission, vision, and values. Because we believe that only those people who share the same mission, vision, and values who are able to work with us and for a long time, okay, who believe in our mission, vision, and values. So our company's mission, which is to make it easy to do the business anywhere. And our vision is want to be the best, a good company, long last for 102 years. And our vision, which is aim to serve 2 billion consumers, create 100 million jobs, and help 10 million SME to be profitable. But most importantly, actually, it's a value. Value is the way how we work together. It is a guiding principle. It is a ground rules, and tell the people how we interact each others. And so the first value, which is customer first, employee second, and shareholder third. Jack said that many times. And second one, which is trust, make everything simple. Third, which is change is the only constants. And for this one, I think change, we are actually living in a very challenging industry, which is a digital industry or the internet industry. And particularly in countries like China, and the business environment, climate are changing very fast. So the change, embrace change actually is one of a very important thing for each employee. And next one, which is today's best performance is tomorrow's baseline. Okay, it's tomorrow's baseline. And then last, Bill, we want to be the best, and we also want our employee become the best of themselves. And the last one is life series, work happily, because although we are in a very difficult and challenging industry, but I think a company hope each employee are able to not just only work happily, also they are able to enjoy their life. So I spent a few minutes to talk about the company's mission, vision, value. But I want to emphasize, which is, as a company, it is very important, and you find those people who share the same mission, vision, and value with you. Then they are able to go with you and believe you and work together, stay together. And 3 years ago, and Jack received an invitation and become the members of the Secretary General's high-level panel on digital corporations. And by that moment, Jack said, education is the first thing to change in the future. Yeah, this is very important. And the greatest challenge of the new technology is the way of education in the industrial age. Strengthening digital education to narrow the digital divide and empowering young people, women, and other vulnerable groups. So one thing we could see in the future in the training, it's going to very different, and we need to find out a new way to do the training. By that moment, I was not really understand when Jack talked about that. Yes, then just only 1.5 years later, then COVID come, and suddenly, all the training program, particularly in the first half years, all our training program moved from offline to online because we are not allowed to gather large group of people together. And then later on, we noticed that, and the online program actually can have also quite positive impact. Then we redesign our program and become online plus offline programs. So I want to give you an example, which is a recent program we designed. And now most of our Alibaba program, whether it is an induction program or the leadership program, so many programs we have redesigned and it become online and plus offline programs. So this is one of the typical program I designed, and recently I just finished one last week. Yes, so this is a new program, and combining with an online webinar and the self-learning materials, as well as the weekly quiz and assignment. Assignment means the people need to submit their assignment, and even more important, we call our lecture team or faculty team will review their assignment and give the comments on their assignment, and this learning become a mutual learnings. So this is one of the leadership program we run internally. So there are 6 modules altogether. So module 1, which is a digital economy China story. Module 2, which is about Alibaba's digital ecosystem. Module 3, which is mission, vision, value. 4 is a strategy. 5, which is about organization and people. Module 6, which is performance management. And then combine all together. Then only when people finish the first phase, which is online course, then they are able to join the second phase, which is offline programs in Hangzhou, and combining with the site visit learning experience as well as a business hackathon workshop. And this is a typical example I try to give to you, and we hope which could help you to get team more understanding about how it works. Yes, and this is a typical schedules we run this kind of program, online program, and the program runs through the 8 weeks altogether, because orientation is week 0. Actually, it's 7 weeks. Yes, so each week we have one or two modules and talking about different topics. Also, they need to complete the quiz and finish the assignment, and then our lecture team will review the assignments, give the feedback, and at the end they need to come out a capstone project and submit their capstone project, then they are able to graduate from our programs. But running this kind of program, I noticed we learned that there actually come several benefits. And first one, which is I call it comprehensive self-learning materials and higher self-learning materials completion rate. Yes, and imagine in the older time when we run the offline program, normally which is continue 5 days or 3 days program, the schedule are very tight. Even we provide some self-learning materials, and participants actually don't have enough time to complete it. Yes, now we design program in several weeks. Yes, so then which allow the participants, employees, and have more time to complete self-learning materials. And that is actually very important for us. And the second, which is learning can go deeper, because we only talk about 1 or 2 topics 1 week, which means the employee, which allow employee have more time to digest the key messages we try to deliver to them. And this is actually very important. Thirdly, which is a good pace of the learning. As I mentioned before, the old time, the program was continuous several days. Now it's continuous several weeks. Yes, so they are able to easily. We're able. The pace of the learning are more smoothly and peaceful. And the last, which is a flexible schedule, we'll easily move the schedule. If there's something happens, but which also brings some new challenge for us. And the first one, which is engagement level is relative low. I mean relative low. Which is still certain levels. For example, the one of the program we just completed last week, and there are 157 or 181, around 86 people complete a recent leadership program, which is a 8 weeks program I just share with you. And I think our solution, which is you need to have a clear ground rules, you need to have a self-learning materials, you need to combine with online webinar, quiz, assignment, and also you need to design the interactive learning experience, and which allow the mutual communications between the participant and the lecture team, which are extremely important. And the second challenge, I noticed that the communication is becoming easier. And for example, how to conduct a formal discussion through online. For example, strategy meeting, goal setting, performance review. All these kinds of are very serious business topics. Yes, in the old time we are able to run it through offline, but now we all need to run this online. But China is okay, because this pandemic is under control. But our overseas office actually, which is a very big challenge. So our solution, which is our OD, organization development and TD team, need to design a clear instruction and train the employee how to conduct a formal communication by the different scenario. And okay, third, which is a lack of the human touch between the participants, right? Yes, before we run an offline program, people all stay in the same room and they're talking to each other face to face. Yes, and then the company also provide the meal, and they have a lunch or even dinner together sometimes. Yes, and but now people see is through their camera in front of their computers. Yes, the human touch become less, and our solution, which is in our program, we design the small group discussion, and we try to give the group assignment, not individual assignment, and which allow them are able to have interactive communications. So I think that's actually running quite well, whether it's an induction program or the leadership programs. And the last challenge, which is the work and the life balance here, right? Yes, because you are in many overseas office, they actually because of the moving control, they have to stay at home, and the boundary between their work and life are not like clear sometimes. So I think for that, our solution, which is we have to respect. Yeah, I think the Jack's, I remember last one several years ago, and Jack and talking to the globalization's leaders who said the number one thing for the globalization, which is respect. Okay, so this is about the challenge. Okay, so this all the slides I want to share with you, and I hope it helps. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Well, I think that you've identified some of the challenges that we're finding in education as well as in the business world of trying to move to an online environment and yet still keep everyone engaged. Engagement's a whole lot harder. And I think some of your strategies might be useful in education as well to bring people together. So At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Heather and William. Heather is the Chief Learning Officer at McKinsey and has a number of years of experience there. And William is her colleague who also has been at McKinsey for a number of years. So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, and you and William can share the time and the screen. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Susan. Nice to meet all of you virtually. So we're going to talk, William and I are going to talk a little bit about how McKinsey thinks about onboarding our colleagues and sort of the beginning of their development journey. I will just, I think that Anja did a great job of laying out some of the things that employers are looking for as we look for our colleagues. When you join McKinsey and we think about your development, development and growth is a very large priority in how we think about our colleagues. And we actually sort of have a three-pronged approach, I would describe, to how we support their development. So we think about one, which is formal learning. The second leg of the stool, as I like to think about it, is apprenticeship. And so it's on the job coaching, feedback, et cetera, that folks get. And then the third leg is really how we deploy them. So how we think about opportunities for individuals. We staff them on teams, different projects that they take on, et cetera, as we're always looking for stretch and growth opportunities for those individuals as we think about developing them. So it's really those three pieces that we think about in the development journey. William and I are going to focus a bit more on how we think about the learning journey, but I just did want to emphasize that this is like a piece of how we think about development and growth at McKinsey. So let me share just a couple of slides here, and hopefully everyone can see a slide that says approach to onboarding.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, and this is something that it was probably 4 or so years ago that we really took a hard look at how we onboard our colleagues. And we went from thinking about it as a kind of more of a 1 to 2 week learning program into more of a multi-phase journey that really starts on day one and supports the individuals for 12 months over time, again, with some things that are very learning focused, but then also kind of a much more holistic integrated journey to support those new hires. So both from the, what are the specific learning programs that they should be a part of, to how do we provide them buddies and mentors and coaches along the way as they're joining and getting up to speed, et cetera. And then making sure that everyone in the firm goes through this onboarding program. We have an approach that we say, which is 100%, 100%, 100%, which is 100% relevance, 100% reach. So reach is all of our colleagues, and 100% impact. And that's how we think about all of our learning programs and really our journeys as we think about them. The other thing I will say is that, we also took a very cross-functional approach to this, in the sense of making sure that our learning colleagues, our professional development colleagues, our recruiting, IT, HR, all were working together to support our colleagues as we bring them on board. So again, it's not just a learning view of how we support and develop our colleagues. And then as we thought about this, we also took a very, you can call it customer back approach, or a, learner back approach, to sort of say, how do we make this, magical and special? And how do we make this really help our colleagues not only get the basic skills that they need, but also really understand the value and the McKinsey culture? And so, as we think about these are just some of the kind of special, quote unquote, moments in time that help our colleagues onboard into McKinsey, from personalized note cards to, this notion of a digital passport, which is a tool that provides them all of the paperwork and information that, often will get lost with a new hire, that sort of, is with them along their whole journey. And then sort of very much hands-on immersion days, and then this notion of a reunion, as again, what we're trying to do not only in this learning program is build, as I mentioned, the capabilities of the individuals to be effective and when they join the firm, but also embed the culture of McKinsey and also help people build initial connectivity so that they sort of have a class of people that they started with that they can kind of, reach out to if they have other questions, concerns, and sort of share their own journeys. So that's a little bit about, just to kind of get you started. I think William's going to talk a little bit more about the journey, the specific program, and then beyond. And William leads all of our learning for our colleagues, sort of from when they start up through their first few years at the firm, when they're individual contributors.
Wonderful. And it's a real privilege to be here today. Thank you for including us. Hopefully y'all can hear me all right.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So as Heather mentioned, we really think about the journey of a particular colleague as a set of almost moments in time in their career. And what we do is we first, of course, focus on their onboarding and a successful onboarding. Very quickly, we then get into a role-specific journey, which is all about helping our colleagues to be excellent as individual performers. And then when you think about our consulting path, we go from there to helping them to become great managers and beyond within McKinsey. As Anja mentioned, we still very much think of some of these trainings not only as opportunities to build skills, but also as opportunities to help these colleagues figure out what they want to do in their careers, whether that be at McKinsey or in another context. We certainly would prefer to retain every single one of these colleagues, but we also acknowledge that many of them are likely to pursue something else over time, and we don't want to be seen as discouraging that exploration that may lead them to go on to a different career, because the reality is if that's what they're meant to do, we shouldn't be pretending that they should remain at McKinsey. We should give them the full menu of options as they think about their career. So when we say individual excellence, as Heather mentioned, what we mean there is any colleague who has not yet transitioned to manager. And there are a wide range of courses that we offer to help an individual excellence colleague do well in their role. By the way, the typical consultant spends about 2 years on the so-called individual excellence journey. There are a set of things which we consider core. So, for example, if you look at the middle of this page, there is the signature leadership development opportunity. So this would be an iconic course, which has typically been in person. Of course, the pandemic has meant that we've had to deliver this virtually over the last year or so, but we certainly intend to go back to an in-person format. And this is a week-long opportunity for individual excellence colleagues from around the world to come together and not only build skills, but also really start to think about their personal leadership style and also connect with colleagues from all over the world, which is critical to the fabric of our firm and to the culture of our firm, that folks get a sense for the broader McKinsey, not just the McKinsey that they know on their teams or in their particular office. Another example of a core offering is our Business Essentials course, which you see there to the right of the Signature Leadership Development week. And that Business Essentials course is all about making sure that our colleagues, right after they have onboarded, are up to speed on the core skills that they need to be facile with business topics at McKinsey. A number of these other items, in many cases, are essentially core. So, for example, as you think about technology foundations, our work is considerably more technology enabled than it used to be. So the vast majority of our colleagues who have recently joined will go through those foundational technology courses, but that's not necessarily required. And actually, if you step way back, very little is required within McKinsey when you think about learning. So we really consider our colleagues to be customers of this content. And we hold ourselves to the high standard of them wanting to take these courses as opposed to us forcing it on them. Of course, there are certain elements which we have to ask every colleague to complete, which include risk training and other things along those lines. But basically, everything you see on this page is optional. One other thing I'd like to call out is our master classes. So this is a relatively new concept. It's actually been developed during the pandemic. I fully expect us to keep it long after we've returned to in-person learning for our iconic courses. The idea here is that we have a number of experts within our firm who are particularly passionate at and good at a specific topic. It could be strategy. It could be how to communicate effectively with CXO level audiences. It could be some form of self-help. It could be meditation. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we have colleagues where they're quite good at that topic. And so what we've given them is a forum to share that with others in the firm who are interested in that. So certainly not required, but it's gotten very, very good feedback because there are a number of folks who do want to dive deeply on a particular subtopic and who greatly appreciate that we have folks in the firm who know that well. So that is a view of the individual excellence journey. And of course, there is a similar view as you think about every subsequent level in the firm, because we all continue to learn. And, building on Neo's point about some of these very unique offerings that celebrate colleagues who have really achieved themselves within the firm, as you think about more senior level learning programs within McKinsey, they take on a similar flavor in the sense that it's not only learning, but it's also celebration. So as you think about, for example, our new partner orientation, that event has multiple angles to it, not the least of which is including spouses and significant others in the celebration so that they can get a sense for what it is that a partner colleague at McKinsey does day to day. So with that, I'll pause.
Oh, that's fascinating. Heather, are you going to come back in, or do you want to move to discussion?
We don't have anything else. I mean, Susan,
Okay.
I'll let you guide us what's next.
Great. All right. Well, I think that is an excellent start. And as I said, I certainly understand the need for all of us in education to start looking in these directions. But I guess one of the questions I would have is, as you're bringing on new people, what's the role of culture and values? Neo mentioned that they focus on understanding Chinese, East Asian culture for people from other areas, as well as making sure that people from East Asia understand the Western perspective. How does McKinsey look at that issue? Heather, you want to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as I think William and I both referred to, culture, as we think about kind of what are our objectives of any of our learning programs, right? There are multiple objectives. Capability building is one, connection is another, celebration is another. Another one of the objectives is culture. And so we do a number of different things. So our onboarding program dives deep into the firm history and into the firm values. And that is a core part of what we're trying to teach and get across to the firm and to our new colleagues, is about the culture of McKinsey and the importance of it and what it looks like. And then kind of as we move along the journey, we do different things. As William mentioned, one of the elements of the individual excellence journey is, even at, let's call it 9 months of tenure at the firm, they go to a program that is global in nature, meaning we bring together colleagues from all different parts of the world into a program, and we repeat that multiple times. And then as people hit different celebratory milestones, when they hit a manager, we have a program that we call, it's Cambridge, because we typically hosted at Cambridge, which is for our manager level colleagues. And we bring out every manager from all over the world together into this program, kind of as they sort of in their first year of being a manager. And then the same thing happens And with new partner orientation, that's another moment where we bring together that entire class of colleagues. Because again, understanding not only the culture of the firm, but the culture of the global firm is critically important to us. And as I mentioned, learning is just one place that we really try to drive that home. We also work on that through how we deploy our people. So we really think about deployment opportunities to be staffed on studies in different parts of the world. We really emphasize mobility, encourage our leaders as they develop to take advantage of the number of mobility options at the firm. So again, all of that is about trying to create, we call it a one firm culture, and really to build that in, as that is a kind of a core of how we operate and make decisions. And it enables us, when you can drop yourself into any McKinsey team all over the globe, and you know how to operate on that team, because we have a shared mission, shared vision, shared purpose, and also a shared sort of approach to problem solving and how we attack, solving problems for our clients.
And Anja, you work with a variety of companies and therefore a variety of cultures. How do you help them look at the culture within and also the culture that they are going to be interacting with as they work with other groups?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very big question, but I think there are two elements that are really important from my experience. One is to help companies make the culture fit the strategy or make the culture fit the business. What I mean is that recently, there has been a lot of fuss and excitement about culture and cultural aspects in business. And a lot of this is not straightly linked to what the companies want to achieve in terms of business. So I always emphasize that first you need to have your strategy straight and your business goals clear. And then you can talk about, does that mean you need to be more innovative? Does this mean you need to travel more, travel less? Does this mean you need to talk more to each other or spend more time alone? I mean, all these can basically be seen as functions of business goals that you want to achieve. So that's a really important element that I think you cannot stress enough, because you can also waste a lot of time on building cultures that do nothing for business goals. And ultimately, I mean, most businesses are in the world to achieve something, even if it is not a financial goal. So making sure there is this alignment is just absolutely crucial. The second point that I would mention is more about conscious and unconscious aspects of the culture. And in my experience, the more you understand the unconscious elements of the culture you have in a company, so stuff that is hidden in the behaviors and hidden in the ways people talk to each other, but is not written down, the more you understand that, and the more you can bring it to light, but then kind of let it sink back into behaviors, so that what was unconscious becomes a conscious decision. I think the more successful you are going to be with really making the culture work for you and creating a certain dynamic. And I must say, Neo, I really liked the slide that you showed on the values of Alibaba, because I feel that some kind of process like this has gone into how these are framed and how you explain to us how they are used. Actually you do dig up some stuff that normally you don't talk about, and then you put it into a phrase that is not just a nice phrase adopted from outside in, but really brought up from inside out, and then you can work with it. So those would be my 2 points: link it to strategy and business goals, and make sure you get the unconscious stuff out in the light, and then decide how to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't know, Neo, did you want to add anything to that? I mean, you certainly talked about how you're doing that, but I guess one of the other questions that I might have is, as you're looking at the current environment where clearly businesses around the world are rethinking, new hires are rethinking new directions to move into, how are you making decisions about how to bring in new people, or is it more focused on developing the people you have to meet the needs that you're identifying? That's open to any of you. Now you may want to start, but no.
I mean, I can jump in quickly.
Sure.
I mean, we have what is perhaps a bit of a unique situation, which is a very privileged place to be in, which is we are looking to hire considerable numbers of folks over the coming year and years to fuel our growth. We've actually seen quite a bit of strength coming out of the pandemic, and actually even during the pandemic, because a lot of our work was in support of clients that were thinking through how to deal with the very challenging issues associated with this global crisis. So in particular in the United States, but around the world for that matter, we are actively hiring tons of people, and actually are in quite a crunch as it relates to our resources at the moment. So that, that's more of a recruiting question, but the answer is consistent with the way we think about learning, which is we are always looking for folks who have backgrounds of achievement. So, a number of our colleagues actually I'm a great example. I was a history and literature major in college. So I had no marketable skills, arguably, when I showed up.
I'm a historian too, so.
Yeah, so we don't want to, I think that's how this ties to learning, which is we don't want to close off, backgrounds like that when we think about bringing in talented folks. We actually want to encourage people who have what would be considered potentially non-traditional business backgrounds to come work for us. And then once they get here, it's the job of our learning organization to ensure that they have the skills and capabilities to effectively do their work.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting things about the consulting companies is that they are looking for kind of what Anja was talking about, good thinkers, good people with abilities to consider new solutions to current and old problems. And certainly the liberal arts institutions around the world have focused on that, and that's an area of growth. Alice, as you've been looking at your research, what do you see in terms of what it is that people are looking for as they're hiring new employees?
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. I think one of the common themes I've seen so far, as one participant has stated in the Q&A, is learning agility, and that's one thing employers look out for, and most of the employers I've interviewed so far have stressed on that, especially those who have graduate training routes where they employ young graduates at the trainee level, train them on the job to suit, as most of our panelists have already mentioned, the culture, the shared vision, the shared values. So the ability for young employees to be able to learn on the job is very critical. And in the moment we find ourselves where things are reshaping, we have to learn things all over again and find new ways to be able to allow young people who are young employees to adapt to industry context, then learning becomes critical. But one of the missing themes that I haven't seen so far is how employees are making sure that learning institutions are making sure young people have that mentality or the ability to learn on the job, and how prepared they are to be able to adapt to the work environment.
No, yes, I think that we see that in the United States as well, that the learning institutions are continuing in many cases to do what they've always done and assume that somebody else is going to pick up the individual and prepare them once they get hired. And I think that's the traditional education does not always prepare them to be able to do that. So I think that's an excellent point. Anja, I'm going to go back to the article that we mentioned earlier on the deliberate now I'm going to have to look at my
Deliberately developmental organization.
Yes, thank you very much, because that is really making it clear to everybody what an individual's strengths and challenges are and trying to help them develop them. But how successful have companies been in doing that in a way that's not threatening to the employees? You might say a bit about what they're doing so that.
Yeah. So let me say 2 words about the article or the research. So what Susan is referring to is an article on the Harvard Business Review from a couple of years back about deliberately developmental organizations by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. The 2 of them have a long history of working with personal learning journeys, and they've also published a book which is called An Everyone Organization, about this idea of the deliberately developmental organization, where they're actually trying to address the point that we were just getting to in our discussion, namely, how can you build an organization that best enables the individual to grow from where she or he stands at that point in time. Quite frankly, I think most companies in the past have not thought about themselves like this, right? Because they have thought more about themselves as goal achieving machines, and then about employees as like resources to make this happen, which is the old like 19th or early 20th century view. And then in the past years or past decades, we have seen some shifts. And I think we are seeing more of them where companies realize that they really need to care about their individual employees. And I was quite intrigued by the change even in the naming, William and Heather, when you said that the early stages of learning are now called individual excellence journey. I think this reflects exactly such a mindset. So coming back to your question, and I recommend the article to those online, just like read it, and I don't need to report everything about it. You were asking, aren't people afraid of this? I think this is one of the big hang-ups that a lot of companies have when they think about learning and training. They think that people are afraid of change. And quite frankly, I think a lot of consultants have done their part to instill this belief, because then they come in and help achieve the change. But when you think about human beings outside of work, they do change all the time. I mean, just think about how many new skills people learned during the pandemic when they were forced to sit at home. They suddenly start baking bread, or they start, sewing, or whatever it is. And people do that all the time. They take up new relationships, they drop old relationships, they start new sports, whatever. And acknowledging that and making that part and parcel of how you work with your employees, I think is really a key to success. So my answer to your question, Susan, would be there is a lot less fear than we usually anticipate. And we almost need to get rid of that fear and help people change the way they want to change. And of course, then there are like the nuts and bolts of how to do it right. But the assumption that there is an underlying issue with this, I think, is frankly wrong.
Anyone want to react to that? I realize you're at a disadvantage for not having read the article, but the notion of surfacing the challenges in performance, as well as the underlying reasons for those challenges. One of the things that was mentioned was a manager who didn't open up or didn't make a good decision, in part because he felt it was so important to stay in control. And in discussion, realized that and shared that in fact was why he had ended up making a bad decision. But I think that certainly in education institutions, we do not open up to those conversations. We don't give people the opportunity to question themselves about what their internal motivations were in the situation, because they're so concerned about maintaining face, maintaining their position as all-knowing and correct in all the decisions that they make. But I think that certainly.
At least at, McKinsey, we very much have a culture of both giving and receiving feedback, being very transparent about your development needs. And so, for example, we'll have we have something called a team kickoff where you start each project, and as a part of that discussion, you share with everyone else your development needs, and it's 360. So a manager might share with the individuals that are working for them what their development needs are and ask for feedback on those development needs over the course of the study. The individuals themselves share what they're working on in terms of making it very, very transparent to the process. So that is a core part of what we do. We have a philosophy around the obligation to dissent. And so if an individual feels like they have the fact base, no matter, how senior the person is that they're engaging with in discussion, they have an obligation to say, hey, I don't agree with you, manager. You don't have the right set of facts. And the conversation doesn't become, confrontational or adversarial, but it's a very much an appreciated dialogue, that where people kind of become peers when we're talking about facts and problem solving and how they approach that. So we agree again, as we think about the legs of our stool around development, we talked about formal learning programs, but this notion of apprenticeship and how we apprentice our colleagues and the need to be really transparent about what your development needs and goals are, because that will help you further get apprenticed by the colleagues around you on those things. Also, that transparency helps to ensure you are attending the right learning programs. As William mentioned, this notion we've created of these master classes. Well, the reason that we're seeing the kind of the matching of the need to the master class is, as a part of the review process, or even within the study, we're very transparent about an individual's development needs. And if you get feedback on communications as a focus area for you, then we will say, and we've got this great master class to help you develop. And then the individual feels good about being transparent about the need, because then we're meeting the need, and then they grow and develop, et cetera. So I would say we are fully aligned with, how the article thinks about, developing our colleagues, and that the priority that we place on growth and development. I think the one thing I would say is the other way we think about it is, that the article is written very much from the sort of a organizational perspective. We also think about what we call a learning culture and creating a culture of learners. And so that's also something that we think a lot about from an organizational perspective. Yes, we help support development of our individuals, but we also help to try to create a culture within the organization that everyone views themselves as continually needing to learn and grow.
And Neil, how is Alibaba addressing this issue? Because certainly face is a big concept in Asian culture. How do you enable people to be more open about their strengths and weaknesses?
Alibaba is a very unique company, because when people think about Eastern company, they will think about, oh, it's a Chinese company, and the majority of Chinese people who are quite shy and not that direct. And the Chinese culture is very indirect. If they tell you something, sometimes they don't tell you directly. They will tell you something else, and they think you're probably able to get it, right? But Alibaba is not like this, yes. And overall, to say, and people are quite direct and go straight to the point. And I remember there's one culture which is very important. And I noticed that in the very beginning when I joined the company, and from one of the Jack Ma face-to-face, and he said, if there's one requirement for our internal Alibaba leaders, I would like to say that is be authentic. That is actually, when I heard that word, the first thing come to my mind, which actually was many years ago, before I joined Alibaba, I was trained as a certified facilitator for DDI. And in DDI, there's a course called Leadership Essential, and which talk about the three basic requirements for the leaders. And the number one, which is be authentic. Number two, which is take the feedback as a gift. Number three, is coach the others. So that is why when first time I heard when Jack talk about that, be authentic, this is like something, because before I joined Alibaba, my entire working experience working for the multinational company for about 13 years. Yes, my professional background mostly based on Western's knowledge, and then that was the first time I hear a Chinese leader and talking about something and link directly to my previous background, which was purely the Western management leadership, the concepts. So I try to understand, what does be authentic really mean in Alibaba? Then I noticed that, yes. In 2014, that was the first year, and Alibaba listed in Nasdaq. And because of that, Alibaba became a well-known company, and many people who joined Alibaba because Alibaba is a listed company, and many people who join Alibaba come out with a very famous and with a high level position, and who join Alibaba with a mindset. Hey, see, Alibaba, a local company. I'm quite senior, and I come to try to save you. And from my professional background, right? Yes, and I think one reason I think Jack and talk about be authentic in that moment, which is try to tell those people, hey, what we say, we don't want those people who looking at his job and his position from a saver's view, right? Yes, we want the people who actually take their position seriously, has equal and equal views with the other people's, and that is very important. This is the first time I heard this word, be authentic. And the second time I heard the be authentic, which is 2 years ago, 2019, and September 10. Why September 10? September 10 is a Teacher's Day in China. That is a day we, give appreciation to teachers, to appreciate their help. Yeah. Internally, we through our trainer program, we train a group of the business leaders to become our certified and lecturers to train internal employee. And our CPO, Chief People Officer, head of the HR, and talking to a group of the Alibaba's certified teachers, around 1,000 people. Someone is in the online or offline, and who share the #1 request for the Alibaba's lectures, which is be authentic. Yes, and you are working in a company, you are becoming the certified Alibaba lectures, but which now means the company asks you to say something. The company want you to tell the frontline employees through your mouth. And the #1 request which the company want you be authentic and to yourself, and be authentic to your team, and be authentic to the people, those audience and those the participants who listen your lectures. That is a #1 request. That was the second time. So then I think, actually, when we talk about the leadership, yes, and in some certain point, whether it's a Chinese company or a Western company, then when you go to some basic and essentials and the part, it is all the same. And that is actually one of my beliefs, yes. And from my past experience and working in the Western, the Chinese company. Oh, by the way, before I joined Alibaba, I worked for Oracle in the Greater China and for a few years. And one more thing, and Alibaba HR has its own mission, and which is to make people become the best of themselves. I think which also sort of align with what the company try to do. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. All right, we just have about 10 minutes left, and I just ask each of you, if you could tell our universities, and since most of you are getting your employees from the university.
Hi, Susan, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Now, I was just saying that if each of you could, you can't hear me. Okay. What would you say to our universities about the the one thing that is absolutely critical as they are developing young graduates to move into your companies, other companies, society of the 21st century, what would it be? Anja, do you want to start? I know you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to come full circle to where I started. I think my main recommendation would be to help young people not only to learn, but to keep an excitement for learning and also an ability to unlearn. So not get stuck in what you've learned once. And thereby set in motion this virtuous cycle that we now talked about a couple of times, where people can actually grow in their jobs later on.
Okay. Heather, what would you say?
I would absolutely support Anja, and I think I would raise two other points. So one of the things that we've certainly seen with as relates to the pandemic is around personal health and well-being. And we are now trying to teach well-being as a skill at McKinsey. But to me, that the sort of notion of resilience of personal well-being and resilience, that could be something that really you would hope that the folks coming into McKinsey already have those sets of skills around, managing stress, understanding the value of sleep, things about their operating model, et cetera. So I would say that's something that I think the pandemic has certainly brought into focus, but has been something that over time we're seeing more and more of. So I would say that's kind of one piece that I would of advice that I would put back on universities. And then the second piece as well is, while William and Anja both described sort of what McKinsey is looking for is just people that achieve. We're also seeing as they join and what the type of work we're doing, needing more and more sort of digital analytics capabilities in the firm. And so we are, while we still kind of look for that sort of general well-rounded, individual that really is an achiever, we are more and more also looking for a portion of who we're hiring that really do have this depth in analytics and digital. And I would expect to see that sort of more and more. And to, in a future state, I would say, university graduate, even if you're a history major, if they don't have those kind of skills in data and analytics, will be a real challenge. I mean, you think about liberal arts educations. I've got two kids, one in college, one heading off to college, and there's a Spanish requirement, right? That are a language requirement. So he's got to take a certain number of semesters of a language, but there's no data requirement, or doesn't matter what his major is going to be. He's got to take those whatever 2 years of Spanish. But that's nice. But what about if we're really going to be well-rounded in the 21st century? What about that?
Right. Excellent point. William, what would you add?
Heather stole my thunder a bit because I was going to say, although McKinsey is absolutely, open to and excited about folks who have more of a liberal arts background, I think in the real world outside of consulting, we're seeing more and more firms, and we certainly are headed this way as well. But in particular, in other industries, it's becoming increasingly important that folks have a set of skills. And, this has the potential to catch up to, in particular, some of our, more liberal arts focused universities and institutions in the United States where there is still very little, skill-based training going on. So more to come there, but that feels like a big issue that we're going to need to tackle.
Okay. Alice, do you want to add to your learning agility?
Yes.
How can they do that?
I believe this is a great session for young people all over the world to actually understand what employers are looking for and to be able to fine-tune their abilities and skills to enter the world of work. But I'd say that it's also an opportunity for employers, young people in the education system around the world to begin to think about human development, how to prepare young people as holistic individuals entering the world of work. And my advice would be that employers shouldn't just wait for young people to come to the world of work before they begin to engage with young people on what employers are expecting them to have, or the capabilities and skills that they should have. Rather, employees, and I'll say, should consciously engage with training systems, education systems through different forms of employee engagement opportunities, job shadowing, internship, and giving these opportunities to young people to say, we don't want you to come to our work environment before you know what we really want you to have, or before we start training you to get what we expect, but rather we are saying get prepared way before you know what employers want from you. So that's my takeaway and advice to our employers out here.
Well, that's excellent advice, and I think probably a good place to leave it. I don't know. Neo, are you still with us? I know you were having technical difficulties. You want to add what you think universities, K-12 education ought to identify as their responsibility in this? I'm not sure you heard me. What would you advise universities to prepare young people? No, he can't. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank all of you.
Susan, asking me?
Yes, I was. I was saying, did you want to add what you think universities ought to focus on if they're going to prepare young people for the world of work in the 21st century? Just one thing that they could do. I think we're going to let you write that to us in the chat. But thank you all so much. As Alice so rightly put it, I think this is an excellent program for young people to listen to be able to hear what businesses are looking for and the kinds of issues that they need to consider in their own preparation. So again, thank you all so much. Anja, Heather, William, Alice, Neo, we really appreciate your participation. And I think that this will be one of our most replayed sessions, webinars, because of the valuable insights that you all have shared. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you at our May webinar, where we're going to focus on the informal groups, or the non-corporate groups that are focusing on improving education for young people, both K-12 graduates as well as those who have had some opportunity for further education. So we will have that on May 21st, I believe. Just check. And please stay tuned to our website, where we have past sessions as well as this one. But thank you so much. You've made a real contribution today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Susan. Hi, Susan.